actually bad news was to laugh because they didn't know how else to process it. So that's not a very good thing for a priest to have.
Oh,
He had to work that out.
I definitely laugh too often at like awkward news. Not sure if it's bad news per se, but I've definitely been told that I've laughed at inappropriate times.
it just reminded when he was saying that. It reminded me of the movie Joker.
Oh my gosh, it's terrible.
Arthur just laughing.
I'm saying it didn't seem like it was that bad. It seemed like it was kind of awkward.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, I don't think it was that.
It's definitely in the shape.
Yeah.
Can you imagine seeing a little old lady going in? He just starts laughing at it. You know,
Everybody watch the Super Bowl? Those of you who did watch it, what did you think?
It's kind of just like started and then the second half is so
Oh, Tom Brady's winning again.
yeah.
I think I've seen this
Tom Brady's
episode.
probably thinking they should make football harder.
That's kind of funny.
Okay, but what is he doing to win so often? Is he? I know nothing about it. Is he pass or run?
He's got a great, a great arm. He can throw with precision. He thinks well on his feet.
Mahomes is doing great. The receivers just. Did you see? There was a meme. It was like every play that Mahomes is doing, and it's like him being tackled, and then like him like halfway down, and he just kind of does this, and the ball just goes straight to his receiver, and the receiver misses it.
All right. So first things first. I have a problem. I've got this stupid doctor's appointment on Wednesday, and the only time they can do it is 2:00. And rumor is I'm supposed to be here at 2:00 on Wednesday. So I've decided I'm not going to be here on Wednesday, which means you don't have to be here either. So what we can do is this. I want you to use the hour to brainstorm topics for your paper, because you have a major paper in this class. And the 2 drafts is worth 50% of your grade between the two drafts. So I'm going to ask you to use the time to brainstorm some topics instead of coming here on Wednesday. And we'll talk about preliminary topics a little bit on Friday. And then on Friday, instead of having a student-led discussion, I'm going to send around the extra readings, and we'll do the extra readings discussion on Friday. Okay? That make sense?
Are you gonna post the extra?
At some point. I mean, I suppose I could just do it today, so but we won't have our discussion about it until Friday.
Just in case you want to do something.
Right. Well, and you can do the summary for them by Friday instead of by Wednesday. Because the point is to make you do it before we have a discussion. On the topic of summaries, how are people doing on the summaries? Who's done a couple of the summaries? How many have you done? All right, good. Well, I just always want to get those back on people's minds, because as you get more responsibilities, as you get closer to midterms, you'll get distracted from them. And of course, you have to have a batch of 5 done by that spring break midterm response. So don't lose track of those. I expect you to do that. I think that's all I have logistically. I feel like this desk is smaller than usual. Just getting claustrophobic.
I really would appreciate if they made
I mean, right? I mean, what you want a notebook and a book on the same desk? What are you, the King of France? I mean, all right, book 3, St. Augustine Goes Away to College. What'd you guys think? How'd that go?
I thought it was just book 1 and 2 extended, but
The director's cut. Oh, there's some content here. I think there's some new stuff. I think there's some fun twists here.
It was interesting, like how the records, the Roman Greeks, how he was kind of more self-aware. He kind of recognizes they're not a good influence. Like he still hangs out with them sometimes, but he's like, oh, they're not great. So it's kind of different from. Then again, it sounds like they're doing things that are more serious than just stealing pears.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
Is stuff from Cicero included in the extra readings for this book?
I haven't reviewed what's in the packet. I think I have something from Cicero. We do not have the full text of the Hortensius. I don't think that's in there, but there is a sample from Cicero. The Hortensius itself is a lot like Plato's Republic, as far as I can tell. It is a discussion on the value of philosophy. And gosh darn it, it turns out that the philosopher thinks that philosophy is worthwhile. At the very best, there's actually a very easy way to show that philosophy is worthwhile. If somebody says they think philosophy is stupid, you ask them why. And whatever they say, you say, now you're doing philosophy. So, you really only have a choice of which philosophy or how deep your philosophy is. You don't really have the option of not doing philosophy. Yeah. All right. Other reactions to book 3? All right. So this is where he leaves town to go to Carthage for his studies there. I think a lot of this in book 3 is a little silly. So did everyone get the idea of how he thinks he was a bad person in book 3? What were the things that he was involved in?
He goes to plays.
Yes, the bastard. He would go to see plays. What a horrible human being. I mean, this goes back to a Platonic critique of art and especially plays. That it's a kind of dishonesty, and that it is basically less real than it's sort of a copy of a copy of a copy. Which now that we have very high quality copiers doesn't make as much sense to you. But it used to be we had these like not so great copiers, and each level of the copy was noticeably inferior to the previous version. Have I put the Platonic view of art on the board? Have I done that already? Yeah. Right, yeah. So basically the idea, of course, is that physical reality is a copy of something more real, and artistic net fiction is a copy of what's already a fake copy. So there's sort of a metaphysical reason behind it. There's also just sort of a practical concern, the idea being that it's just easy to lie with a film in various ways. I mean, it sure is nice to, whatever topic you want to address, it sure is nice to be able to put words in the mouths of people you don't like and portray them in certain ways. So you can do this to make your view look correct, even if it's not. So let's have the German pro-Nazi version of World War II movie. Now, fortunately, there's nobody out there that would make this. But you can retell the story and speak to it as if what their side vision of things was correct. And this is what you can do with art. So the fear is always that it is easy to manipulate people with art. Whether it is inaccurate portrayals of men versus women or racial minorities or, so here's one that probably is of concern to some of you. Religious people are depicted in TV and in art. I noticed in the 70s and 80s, religious people were almost completely ignored. The idea, although 90+% of people in our country claim to be Christians, there were very few TV characters with identifiable religions. Then, by the time the 90s went around, they started introducing Christian characters, but they'd always be these complete jerks. They'd be the Angelas from The Office, or they'd be irrelevant like Ned Flanders and Dorky. Although I'm a little less offended by that because I've met too many Christians that vaguely remind me of Ned Flanders. But yeah, the way that you portray people in media is important, and it's easy to portray people unfairly. So The Office's paradigm of a Christian is this fundamentalist who is also promiscuous and into adultery and such. I mean, not good and dishonest. I don't know. So what else was he into? So he's into art, into going to the plays. So that's not so good. What else? Sort of is emblematic of his college days?
You read the scripture and is it a fan?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that. I don't want to get to that quite yet. But that is a fun plot twist. St. Augustine's about to read the Bible. He's going to love it. Nope, plot twist. It's not what happens.
Is there a reason that he likes the pseudo origin stories from chapter 1, but not the plays?
Yeah, that's kind of a fun question. Why is he not disapproving of the written narrative, but he is disapproving of the acted out version? Short answer is I'm not sure. I think he thinks the use of live actors portraying things is sort of a level of dishonesty. So the actors and actresses are not honest about what they're doing. But yeah, that does seem, I kind of agree with your instinct there. That does seem a bit arbitrary. I mean, if there's something wrong with fiction, there's something wrong with fiction. And in the Republic, Plato doesn't go after plays, he goes after, the ancient mythologies. So, yeah, that might just be, sort of an arbitrary thing. I don't really, I can't provide a good defense of why the one would be bad and not the other.
Wasn't it one of the earlier books he was talking about how he did a lot of reading fictions and kind of has an issue with that too?
Well, he basically came down to he liked the Greek ones written, he liked the Latin ones written in his original native language, but he didn't like the Greek ones. But that's because he can't read the foreign language. And there's times he's a little critical of the immorality portrayed in some of the Greek mythology, but when he's actually recounting his youthful years and enjoying the myths, he doesn't have this judgmental tone towards himself the way he does here. Let's see, what else should we mention?
Who are the records?
Who are the wreckers? The wrecker, were you the one who said this reminds you of book 1 and book 2? It's a kind of a group of buddies. It's an adolescent peer group, except they've kind of upgraded their mischief. They're college students. They're into wrecking people's classroom experiences and such. What more strategic thing to it?
But now he's separated himself from the group because he's like, oh, they're really bad. I don't want to do that.
I think by the end of the book, you get to the end of that. Yeah, this group's going to get themselves and people around them in trouble, and this is not Yeah, this is not the peer group he wants to be part of. Not the group he wants to be. Let me see, is there anything else I should say specifically about the records? Yeah, not really. He's, he's tempted to join in with them, but doesn't really. He also gets himself involved. Is this in chapter 3? Yeah, in chapter 3, he meets his live-in common law, concubine wife, lover. He meets a woman at church. They kind of sandwiched between two discussions of the records. But he meets a person at church, and they sort of inaugurate their ongoing 9-year dalliance. Actually, yeah. If we push ahead to chapter 4, we see Cicero. And here, so again, there were 4 main authors that were at the heart of the rhetorical college training back in the ancient world, and Cicero was one of them. So he's given the Hortensius, and he's told to imitate the styles of the Hortensius, to imitate the format of the Hortensius. But what is distinctive here is he said, well, the form was great and all, but it was the content that he is stricken by. And the content is, of course, on the importance of wisdom. So he says in chapter 4, in the ordinary course of study, I came upon a book by a certain Cicero, whose tongue almost all men admire, but not his heart. This work contains his exhortations to philosophy and is called Hortensius. This book changed my affections. It turned my prayers to you, Lord, and caused me to have different purposes and desires. All my vain hopes forthwith became worthless to me, and with incredible ardor of heart I desire undying wisdom. I began to rise up so that I might return to you. I did not use that book to sharpen my tongue. That I seemed to purchase with my money, with the money my mother gave to me, since I was in my 19th year. My father died 2 years before. I did not use it then to sharpen my tongue, nor did it impress me by the way of speaking, but rather by the way it spoke. So what do you make of this? I mean, so here is Cicero, not a Christian, and Augustine is going to say, here is a thoroughly secular book that brought me closer to God. What do you all think of that? I mean, some Christian traditions have a problem with that kind of thing.
Kind of seems like it sort of jump-started the change in his way of thinking. Like before first education, he was always focused on, it's just like the style, trying to sound, or trying to make the best arguments, and just kind of trying to sound as fancy as it could, sort of in a way, in his arguments. And this is kind of changing what he's focusing on. He's focusing on like the content, on actually like, learning the meaning of passages rather than just how to argue with people or how to sound smart.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think in college, unlike high school, in high school, you just kind of do what you're told. In college, at least if you're a mature person, at a certain point, you start to say, why am I doing all this? This is hard. Why am I doing all of this? And I think a text like Cicero, or like Plato's Republic, it's the kind of text that makes you ask, well, what's the point? And it turns out that what's the point is an important question. And Augustine is going to say, well, the Archbishop Augustine, looking back on his Jesus, says, well, by asking what's the point, this is an inherently religious question. What ought we to desire above all else? What ought we to work toward? I don't know, did any of you have a book that, sort of changed your life in one way or another?
Well, I'm gonna say book, but,
Or a show?
along the lines of secular knowledge, like, some of the advanced, my other major is neuroscience, FYI. So it's the advanced biology classes I take or neuroscience classes, and like, evolution's just looking a little hairy right now.
Oh, interesting.
So,
So the advanced classes made you less credulous of evolution, is that what you're saying?
yeah, maybe more skeptical of evolution. So I think it is a modern sort of jazz that, Augustine is, experiencing here, where some secular research or even just reading Cicero could push you towards religion. It's not necessarily going to church that pushes you to religion.
Yeah, I mean, there's a way that makes sense. If you are told something will explain things, and you dig deep enough into that thing that's supposed to explain things, and you get to the bottom and you're like, huh? That's the answer that you've been promising, that's it? And that's kind of what happens with the Manichees for Augustine. So do you mind if I ask a little bit more about this? I'm intrigued. So what is it about neuroscience that you found unsatisfying?
Okay, specific example. There's, inside every cell, there's a matrix of, tiny bones, the cytoskeleton. Hopefully it equates to 211, so we're following along, but there's some microtubules holding up the cell structure in the body of the cell. And almost all of the proteins that are made right next to the nucleus are used either on the cell membrane outside or are pushed outside of the cell. So there's these, they look exactly like people, like little men. They're called motor proteins, and they hold on to the big protein and literally walk along the scaffolding from the nucleus to the outside of the scalp, to the outside of the cell. And I watched a little animation of it that some person made after studying them under an electron microscope. And it's just like, this man is walking along a scaffolding from the nucleus, holding this giant protein above him. I'm like, how, it seems very designed intelligently.
Okay. So you said something, so the inference you made is that doesn't look like the result of randomness over lots and lots of iterations over lots and lots of time. That looks way too sort of complex and teleological with a goal and these sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still swallowing the evolution pill, but it just got more difficult once I looked into the cell. This is why.
All right, cool. Well, that's a good story. Anyone else have a story?
For me, it's definitely not so much a book, it's more just kind of experience, like things I've seen and learn, like the more and more I learn about the natural world, it's kind of the more I'm kind of convinced that it's not random, like seeing just the different scales of life, like being able to see literally mammaries that are like a 15-foot wingspan, like, and then all the way down to seeing little planktons and stuff like that, being able to propel themselves and actually move, things like that. Just the crazy scales that life exists at is just something that kind of blows my mind.
I mean, there is something impressive about living things. I mean, I guess that's why we make zoos and stuff. I mean, we benefit from looking at them and examining them. Cool. All right, so Augustine reads Cicero. Cicero has this sort of, if not explicitly religious effect at the time, it drives Augustine to ask questions of ultimate meaning and value. In chapter 5, he picks up the Bible. Basically, the point's kind of intuitive. Mom always said this stuff was important. Let me take a look at it. And surprise plot twist, he is not impressed with the Bible. Augustine says it's because of his pride and the simplicity of style. And sure, that could be part of it. I will say it is widely accepted that since Augustine is reading a Latin translation of the New Testament at this point, we know what they had available at this time in history, the 4th century Latin version, and it was a pretty clunky, crappy, mediocre translation. So I don't know what contemporary one I would point to and say, it's crappy and clunky like this one. But let's just say it wasn't a good, smooth, intuitive read. And especially if you're a rhetoric guy like Augustine, who sort of specializes in reading things like the Aeneid and Homer and Cicero, to be downgraded to this sort of mediocre, clunky translation. I mean, it's understandable that he would be unimpressed by it. I don't know. You brought up the translation or the reading of this before. Did you have anything particular you wanted to say about it?
Oh, yeah. With Cicero, I was just kind of comparing that to. That's basically what I was going to say. Is him just the comparison between Scripture and Cicero wasn't anything super well thought out.
Oh, sorry, I jumped off. I was going to say, would he have tried the Greek translation, or he basically did have one Greek at this point?
Well, that's just it. He can try the Greek. He can try to read it in the original Greek, but he's not going to be any good at it. So, as far as we know, I'm not aware that he ever really mastered Greek. Certainly not to the point where he would be doing some translating. So yeah. So that's one of the sort of upshot significance that scholars find today in his, not really, being a C+ Greek student. I mean, you all know, much the same way we have this language requirement here. And the fact that you can fumble through a 200 level language class. Do you all feel like you're confident to go out there and read literature in this foreign language, this French, the Spanish? Yeah. No. You're like, so I can say, where's the bathroom? And I can conjugate six kinds of verbs. Hey, I empathize. I'm not great with languages. I'm good with Latin because, well, I have to be, and because it is more similar to English than most languages. All right, then Augustine joins the Manichae religion. Now, the Manichae religion, some things you should know about it. First of all, it is a religion associated with Christian metaphors and images and things. It's often called, if you ever see something referred to Gnostic Christianity or Gnostic Christianities, Manichaeism is a kind of Gnostic Christianity, which means it uses things like the idea of the Holy Spirit or the character of Jesus, but the things that it teaches are radically different than traditional Orthodox Christianity. So, in fact, Manichaeism is not a monotheistic religion. So that's how different it is. It is a dualistic religion. When we say something is a dualistic religion instead of monotheistic, what we are saying is that instead of teaching that sort of at the center of reality is one all-powerful, all-good God, that really there are two foundational principles to reality, a principle of light and a principle of darkness. And there's sort of these two equal and opposite forces at work. So, sort of metaphysically speaking, I would say that Manichaeism is most similar of the major religions that we're aware of today. It's most similar to Taoism of all things. Here, let me draw the Taoist symbol for you. So it's teaching something like So this is the yin yang in Chinese, the yang in Korean, and this sort of central image metaphor for ultimate reality, the Tao, is a very useful one. It's usually done in black and white, but I brought the wrong markers for that. Although the Korean one is usually blue and red. And the point is something like this. That ultimate reality is a mix of these two forces, good and bad, light and darkness, black and white, passivity and activity, and it's impossible to truly distinguish one without the other, which is the significance in part of the off-colored dots in each half. So Manichaeism teaches a view much like Taoism, that not, sort of the Christian story of the universe begins with an act of creation from one almighty, all-good God, and it ends in Revelation with the judgment edict given by this one all-powerful, all-good divine lawgiver, but that all reality is sort of at this mesh where these two forces of light and darkness meet. And therefore, what you need to do is you need to sort of live your life in a way that sort of maximizes your involvement in the light side and avoids the dark side as much as possible. Now I'm starting to sound like Star Wars. So they had 3 objections to Christianity, and he echoes those objections here in Book 3. So what are Augustine's / the Manichaeans' 3 objections to Christianity?
Is God the source of evil?
Good. So the big, important philosophical problem is the problem of evil. If reality at its sort of foundation is created by one good, all-powerful God, where does evil come from? Now note, the Manichees have a great answer to this problem. What's the Manichee answer going to be? Where does evil come from? Yeah, evil is sort of built into the system. You expect, in a world that is, a foundational mix of good and evil, you expect some good, some evil. You expect some structure, some chaos. So it's sort of just automatically built into the system. Although I think there are good answers, and Augustine ultimately thinks there are good answers to why an all-good God would allow the existence of evil. Those answers you got to work for a little bit more. So that's one. That's the big philosophical one. What are the 2 other issues that he raises? And I believe they're all in chapter 7 of Book 3.
Like the issue of, I guess, the difference in God's commandments over time.
Yeah, so the Manichees and Augustine, frankly, like some people today, read the Old Testament, and what do they say about the Old Testament? There's too much sex and violence in the Old Testament. It's full of polygamy and people sleeping with their wives' handmaidens and warriors who are heroes. So I like to say, Augustine, like a contemporary fundamentalist, says there's too much sex and violence in the Old Testament. Now, Augustine right here gives sort of an answer for that. What's the adult Augustine solution to Old Testament sex and violence.
There's different laws for different times.
Well, I mean, I think you would say there's different laws for different situations, which is also with different times. He says, well, even in our own culture, we have certain rules that are established for holy days and other rules that are, for regular days. You can't do commerce on the Sabbath, but you can any other day. So why, so basically it says it's not shocking that different situations have different rules. Anything else? Well, yeah.
Is there a physical body for God type of thing?
Yeah, the third issue, which Augustine's just going to say, yeah, I'm embarrassed that I ever fell for this one. But the Manichees claimed that the New Testament presents God as a physical, corporeal being. Kind of like Zeus. You expect Zeus, you expect if you can climb Olympus, you get to the top, you will see a physical Zeus. And Augustine says, yeah, I just didn't read the New Testament that carefully. I just mistakenly thought that God would be a physical being. Now he does, in chapter 7, motion towards part of his ultimate solution to the problem of evil. What's going to be part of his answer to why God would create evil?
The absence of good.
Yeah, he's going to say, well, no, God didn't create evil. What we verbally refer to evil isn't a created thing. It's just an absence of a good. So he's going to refer to this metaphysical solution here. Now later he's going to get into other stuff like free will, because saying that what we call evil is just an absence of good. Most people don't find that to be a very satisfying answer, and on its own, it's not a very good answer. But the idea that evil is just a privation of good, you know what that fits in very well with? That fits in very well with Platonism and a Platonic view of goodness and substance. So if you remember the divided line, up at the top, things are the most real, and then as we get further down, it gets less and less real. So remember, the form of the good is sort of the foundation of being itself, and the forms up here are, very real and substantial, and then sort of math and stuff over here, those things are real. But then once you get into the physical realm, then we get into objects, and then we get into shadows, and then evil is just all the way at the bottom of the line. That's where there's sort of no being at all. So why is there evil? Well, because that's just the least real thing in reality. It's evil in a certain sense is unreal. It's a privation, an emptiness of good, an absence of good. And apparently, I don't know how to spell absence. That doesn't look right to me. An absence of being, an absence of goodness. All right. So then we've got some discussions here of the nature of good and evil, where he talks about sort of a natural law that everyone everywhere should be aware of. And he talks about his mom and his mom talking to, this is St. Ambrose, about Augustine.
So that was actually Ambrose, because it didn't have the name.
I think it's implied that it's Ambrose. At the very least, it's clear later that she is close with Ambrose. So I'm not sure this is Ambrose, but he's on the short list of who this could be. And given that later it's established that that family knows Ambrose, it would make sense to think that that's who this is referring to. And Ambrose, or the bishop here, just says, yeah, just wait. You know, basically, the bishop says, well, God's at work in Augustine's life. Be patient. No, I'm not going to go talk to him now and try to provoke a confrontation. We're just gonna wait this out. He's gonna pursue his youthful foolishnesses, and he'll find them unfulfilling, and God will bring him back around. That seems to be sort of the tone of the bishop's advice. And it wasn't wrong. Thoughts on any of this?
It was kind of funny how Augustine later agrees yeah, he made the right decision, just let me do my thing. So he said he was just so stubborn he wouldn't have listened in the first place to what we had to say.
You know, you don't want to be the kind of parent that has nagged their child so much on something that you're literally trying to get third parties involved to track them down, to have the conversations that they're no longer willing to have with you, and that's the risk here. Some comments on the women in this section. Saint Monica actually turns out to be one of the most developed characters in any books of the ancient world. Yes, as you probably know, Saint Monica, it refers to Augustine's mom, and places like Monaco, I believe, are named after her. But so she's an important person in ancient literature. Some people ignorantly accuse Augustine of sexism for not naming his concubine in this chapter. He does not name her here or anywhere else in the book. I think that's an incorrect reading of what's going on there. Frankly, I think he's protecting her because, frankly, it's not very good for the woman to be named as part of the sex scandal of the sexual past of the now archbishop. So the reason he doesn't name the woman is almost certainly out of a desire to protect her. So it's not that she's so unimportant that she's unworthy of the name, especially given the amount of ink that he pays attention to his mom compared to his dad. There's no evidence that he just thinks women aren't worth talking about or thinking about. That seems very counter to the evidence that we have.
Oh, I wanted to talk about mercy when he's discussing shows. I just wanted to get a clear understanding because he's referring to tragedies.
Yes. You want to talk about mercy? Is that what you want to talk about?
Yeah, he's talking about how what it seemed to focus on with his main objection to shows was the false mercy.
Yeah.
Or maybe not the false mercy, but the false things you're merciful towards.
Yeah, so part of it, and this might go to your question about why is he more condemning of theater than of books. He seems to think that he's interested in a certain kind of ancient theater, the cathartic tragedies. So it's the manipulative sorrow brought about in him and the manipulative sort of release of the anger and sorrow, which doesn't really change who you are in the big picture. So he seems to be critical of that and compare that to the real religious experience of having sins forgiven, of having burdens taken off of you. you know, if he lived today, I wonder if he would be the kind of person who likes horror movies in his youthfulness and then later says, yeah, those things are stupid. If you want to feel at peace with spiritual things, grow close to God. Don't watch a bunch of horror movies about people, you know, overcoming spooky, demonic things, vampires and such. You know, don't be someone that just hopes that you'll run into a nice, redeemable vampire like we've been writing about these past 20 years. Be the sort of person that just sort of transcends those sorts of silly supernatural concerns by having your supernatural focus be on God and not on these sorts of middle brow characters we run into in so much of our fiction. This is sure, both situations gave me delight, but now I have more pity for one who rejoices in a shameful deed than for one who has suffered, so to speak, damage to a pernicious pleasure or loss of some violent joy. This is from the middle of chapter 2. This is surely the truer mercy, and sorrow finds no delight in it. Although any man who sorrows over a sinner is commended for his act of charity, no one, yet one who shows eternal mercy prefers rather that there be no occasion for his sorrow. If there is a good will that is at the same time bad will, which cannot be, then only a truly and sincerely merciful man can wish that there might be some unfortunates so that he could show mercy to them. Hence, a certain kind of sorrow can be commended, but none can be loved. Such mercy is yours. Yeah, it seems, I think maybe the experience we should keep in mind is the experience of something like watching Oedipus Rex. You all remember the story of Oedipus, the ancient Greek guy that was prophesized that he would marry his mother and slay his father. When his parents hear this, they abandon the child out in the wilderness. The child gets rescued by a shepherd, taken to another nearby city, is brought up, and as an adult, Oedipus hears this story about himself, and he doesn't know he's adopted, so he just assumes, that this means he loves his adoptive parents, so he goes out and tries to escape his fate, and of course he runs into a grumpy old man at a crossways and gets into a fight with him and slays this older guy, which actually is his actual father. And then I don't remember why he marries the widow, but he ends up marrying the widow, which of course is his mom. And then eventually it all comes out that he brought about the prophecy, and all sorts of bad things happen. The wife mom hangs herself. Oedipus puts out his eyes because that's going to really make the situation better. And just so the idea is you feel merciful and sorrowful with them on the one hand, but that doesn't actually fix anything. So what fixes things is a kind of forgiveness, a kind of warning about sins. And then again, if you think back to that Oedipus story, maybe if the prophecy is that you're going to marry your mother and slay your father, maybe you just don't have any significant dealings with people more than, say, 12, 15 years older. It's not real hard to say, I'm only going to kill people younger than me, and I'm only going to sleep with people about my age or younger. That would be kind of an obvious way to avoid this, instead of, leaving town. But, I guess you need a PhD to come up with these solutions. Anyway, so on Wednesday, try to find a couple of preliminary ideas for your paper. If you can't find ideas, frankly, read ahead. The more of the confessions you read, the more ideas you might have. And then on Friday, we'll get together and we'll have a discussion about the papers, and we'll have a discussion about the readings to accompany book 3. All right, thank you. Have a good one. Oh, anyone who is interested in a summer class I'm teaching my philosophy and movies class this summer. So that will be online in June. You don't have to be here in town. So, as you're thinking, looking ahead, if you need another writing intensive, that fits the bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you.